Today at 6, terror at 37,000 feet when extreme turbulence hit a passenger plane. A British man on board has died. The plane dropped 6,000 feet in just a few minutes. Many are injured, 7 people seriously. This was the chaotic scene inside the cabin of flight SQ321 from London to Singapore after it hit extreme turbulence in the skies over Myanmar. It led to the death of a British passenger in his 70s who had a suspected heart attack, and more than 50 other people on the Singapore Airlines flight were injured, 7 of them critically. I want to show you now a graph that shows the altitude of the plane over several hours, and you can see how it plummeted by around 6,000 feet in just a few minutes. Not everyone had a seatbelt on, and objects and passengers were hurled around the cabin by the turbulence. The plane then made an emergency diversion to Bangkok in Thailand, from where our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head joins us now. Jonathan.
Well, here at Bangkok Airport, they've sent a special flight to pick up those passengers who did not need medical treatment to help them get on to their ultimate destination in Singapore. But we believe more than 70 people needed to be treated in hospital here in Thailand. Some of those were very seriously injured by the severe drop that the plane went through. It was for all of them a completely unexpected and completely terrifying ordeal. Shaken by their terrifying ordeal, the passengers were met by several ambulances as they landed in Bangkok. They'd been eating their breakfast when the Boeing airliner plunged without warning. Jerry was travelling with 6 other family members to a wedding in Australia.
Bit of turbulence, and suddenly the plane plunged. I don't know how far, but it was, they said 6,000 feet. It didn't seem like 6,000 feet, but it was a long way and so sudden. There was no warning at all. And I ended up hitting my head on the ceiling. My wife did. Some poor people who were walking around ended up doing somersaults. It was instantaneous. It really was. And horrible.
The aircraft was over Thailand on the last stage of a 12-hour flight from London to Singapore when it dropped a staggering 6,000 feet, experts believe, throwing any passengers not wearing seatbelts into the ceiling. The pilots then declared an emergency and asked to land at Bangkok, the closest airport.
We currently have 7 cases of critical injuries, 23 cases of medium injuries, including a flight attendant. The rest are minor injuries.
Occasional air turbulence is a risk people know comes with modern-day flying, but the Singapore Airlines crew told passengers that this was the worst turbulence they had ever experienced. It will take an investigation now to find out whether this was something that came out of the blue or whether there were other factors involved. Images from inside the aircraft showed just how powerful the forces were that the passengers were subjected to. A rare occurrence, certainly, but a frightening one too. Jonathan Head, BBC News, Bangkok.
Well, let's go straight to Changi Airport in Singapore, where families are waiting anxiously for their relatives to arrive. And Monica Miller is there for us now. Monica.
Well, there is a very highly secured room where relatives as well as friends who came to pick up their loved ones almost 7 hours ago when that flight was expected to land are now waiting for word on any information that they can get. As we had heard from Jonathan's report, there is expected to be a flight that Singapore Airlines has just for the passengers who are well enough to get on that flight, to get to their final destination. However, it's unclear when that will take off and when it will land. So we had seen one relative who was here earlier. She was clearly visibly upset. But what Singapore Airlines has offered them is comfort, and even some mental health officials are here to help them, guide them through this process. Because as you can imagine, you came to pick up your loved ones at the airport, and then you hear about an emergency emergency landing in Bangkok, and some of these harrowing stories about people who are critically injured. It's hard to assess exactly what is going on, and this has been an incredibly stressful couple of hours. We do understand as well that Singapore officials have gone to Bangkok to really do an assessment of what happened on this flight. Any information here is welcome for those family members who are waiting.
Thank you very much, Monica. Well, I'm joined by our transport correspondent, Katie Austin. And Katie, it's worth stressing, isn't it, that turbulence of this extreme quality is rare?
That's right. I mean, to put it very simply, turbulence is when a plane has flown into a patch of air that has become disturbed. And there are several different types, actually, including something called clear air turbulence. That type can be harder to predict. But at milder levels, turbulence is very common. Passengers will notice some bumpiness, but it's nothing to worry about. More severe turbulence is less usual, although some areas are more prone to it than others, and it can be much more serious. This incident sounds pretty exceptional in its intensity, and the airline has described it as sudden and extreme. It's resulted in clearly a terrifying experience for everyone involved, lots of injuries, and clearly, sadly, a man has died as a result. There is research suggesting severe turbulence is happening more often as a result of climate change. And of course, turbulence is the reason people are advised to keep their seatbelts fastened as much as they can during a flight.
Okay.